Welcome for today's session. The topic is robotics and autonomous systems, a more applied topic compared to the last sessions. First of all, I would like to present very shortly two recent books on this topic by Katrin Misselhorn, a professor of philosophy at the University of Göttingen. And the first book is an introduction to machine ethics. It lays, so to speak, the ground, the basis for further discussion. And her more recent book is on artificial intelligence and empathy. It is a more applied book that deals with the life living with robots, even sex robots, a really interesting topic. I can recommend reading it. We will also discuss these books in the next one of the next sessions, the next year in January, when it comes to more applied questions. But just as a background, these books are really interesting. But today in our session, we would like to discuss a recent article from 2018. And I think that Arno will tell us something about the content. I will also give an overview of the keywords of this article that might be of interest to you.
Yeah, I would like to say only some few sentences about this text, which is not a very well-known text, not a classical text or something like that, but a contribution to a current debate, to a current discussion around the semi-autonomous systems and especially autonomous weapons. And I think although this context, this debate, this ethical context of the debate is a totally different one than the context of the text that we discussed last week, there is a kind of, let's say, a kind of link. Both texts have on the basis of references, on the basis of contexts, not very many things to do with each other, but systematically speaking, I would say, they share a common kind of basic idea, namely to think of machines and specific machines, semi-autonomous machines and machines that are linked to specific technologies like machine learning, to think of them as part of social practices, let's say, as part of social environments, let's say. I very much highlighted in respect to Harry Collins' text of last week that this text is especially interesting because it doesn't compare the human being and its intelligence and the machine and its intelligence, and it doesn't neither compare the human brain and the modeling of the human brain by an artificial machine. No, it poses the question in what way machines can be embedded in social practices, and by embedding them, in what way they possibly could participate in a specific restricted extent in social practices and in social environments. That was the basic question of Harry Collins. And for sure, this kind of thinking allows also to ask in a way the ethical, or to put into question, or to discuss in a way the ethical role of machines in specific context, and the way how we use machines, the way how we design machines, and the way how we design practices in which machines are involved. And this is exactly, I would think, the general approach of this text of Filippo Santoni de Sio and Jeroen van den Hoven. I'm pretty much unsure if I pronounced these names more or less correctly, but I mean the authors of this text, because they are asking in what way autonomous systems, which are not totally autonomous because we don't want them to be autonomous. We don't want in these debates that autonomous weapon systems decide for their own if they shoot or not, if they kill or not. They ask in what way we could keep control of them. And this question of control is important because it's a question of responsibility. Yeah? In this debate, it is clear that we want to avoid that someone could say it was the machine and it wasn't any human being, so there isn't any responsibility that at once 10 people died or something like that. So it's about gaining control or having control. It's about avoiding a gap of responsibility. And what I find especially intriguing in this text, and possibly we have to discuss this today, is that they do not only ask what happens when specific machines are applied, they also discuss in what way we should design machines that allow us to remain in control of these machines. So they really ask about a value-based design. They ask about how we should design the social practice in which these machines are applied, in what way, in a way, we should design the scenarios of use and application of these machines. And I think this is more or less also a question about the sociality, the social role of these machines in respect to the question how we can gain control or remain in control and avoid responsibility gaps. And I have the impression, I'm not an expert in ethical questions. I'm not an expert in the ethics of AI or in the ethics in the field of robotics or something like that. But I think this is a very intriguing kind of approach. It is an approach which is worthwhile to discuss. And I hope, very much hope, and I'm rather optimistic about that we have an intriguing and inspiring discussion about this today. So I hand over to Jörg again.
Many thanks, Arno, for the introduction. As already said, I would like to present the key questions for the discussion of this really interesting text. So first, what do the authors mean by meaningful human control and guidance control? Important concepts. Then the second question, what are the necessary conditions to be satisfied for an autonomous system to remain under meaningful human control? And finally, who is responsible for autonomous systems and to what extent can autonomous systems be called autonomous? This refers to the notion of a responsibility gap that you could see as a part of the keywords to this article. So we are really interested in the discussion. I will now stop the recording and then we proceed with the discussion groups.